Right. So usually what happens is when I say science communication, people do look at science communication as a very umbrella term. Most of you here have expressed and spoken about how science can be simplified and spoken, break down complex concepts and given or shared with the lay people, right? So that's the common definition of science communication which people see and understand, and we put that under the deficit model, right? So this is called dissemination, right? So here what happens is when people or science students or researchers, what they do is when you take a particular complex concept, simplify it and communicate it to people, right? It could be in terms of writing, art, any format, right? That's when dissemination of science communication or dissemination of science is what happens. So most of you have said, right? So I can see that sharing knowledge through sharing scientific knowledge through simple language is what most of you have said about what science communication is, and that all of that falls under the dissemination model. Here you are talking about a particular complex concept in science, and you're telling them that this is how it works, right? So that is a non-interactive medium. So you're just telling them that this is how things work, this is how your DNA replicates, this is how proteins are made, right? So you're just telling them, giving them the awareness that this is a particular concept in biology, that this is how it works, right? So this format of communication is can be addressed to multiple people, right? So it could be spoken and shared with your friends, with your parents, with your younger cousins, right? So with anyone, and it has wider access. You just, let's say, write a blog and you put it out there so anyone can read it, right? So that is a deficit or dissemination model, right? Whereas there are other different forms of communication that is more interactive. So one of the formats is public engagement, where through activities or events, you engage with your audience, you engage with the public, and you teach a concept, right? So, or you break down that particular concept and encourage dialogue between you and the people who are wanting to understand the concept, right? So that's a dialogue model. Whereas there's a participation model where this is again an interactive form, but here what happens is the audience are a little more aware of the scientific process and they involve in generating scientific knowledge, right? So here what happens is the public are interacting with the scientists or the academic institution, trying to figure out a particular solution for a problem they might be facing, right? For example, so there's this science film documentary called Colonies in Conflict that we helped recently. So what these people are doing is they're talking to, so through the documentary, what they want to do is create awareness about how bees are a very important part of our ecosystem. And, it's not right by just destroying these beehives that are just built in these high-rise buildings. So there we are trying to talk to people in different societies, trying to understand what their problems are, trying to find and create solutions that can help them coexist with the bees, right? So these are different ways of approaching and interacting with science and with people, right? So if we want to organize this thought process a little bit, I would put all of this in a graph, right? All scientists, we all like graphs. So let's just try to understand this a little bit, right? So when I said dissemination, right? So here it could be in the form of blogs, it could be in the form of podcasts. So you're just putting that information out there, and you don't get anything back in response. So it's just a one-way model, non-interactive. So it is low intensity. And this, you are talking about it because you know about the topic. You have the field of, you have an expertise in the field, right? So that's one way. Whereas dialogue is where there is a two-way conversation, so it is a high intensity interaction. And then again, since you have a field of expertise there, you are also trying to make people understand what you're trying to say and make them understand in a hands-on manner, right? So that is dialogue. Whereas participation is again two-way, it is a high intensity interactive mode of communication, but it is more spontaneous. Here you also want to understand what the problems of your audience are, how we can create solutions, right? So that is a different method of communication, and that is mostly spontaneous. And flow of knowledge and information is in both ways, right? So these are three main ways. Of course, we'll come back to ambivalence a little later. So but maybe, okay, I'll just give you a quick introduction. Ambivalence is where it's like the gray zone or gray area of science, where not everyone is accepting of what you say. Like, the very common example saying that a lot of people in the West think that the earth is flat, right? So how much ever you try to convince them, they're not going to agree or be convinced that the earth is not flat. In the same way, there are a lot of anti-vaxxers who think that vaccines are not helpful and cause harm rather, right? And of course, we can see so many of such examples in our day-to-day lives, and our phones and mobiles are filled with a lot of such misinformation, where it can be ambiguous, and sometimes people don't accept of what you are trying to explain in the logical sense, right? So all of that falls in that part. We'll not focus on that today. So now